So my deco mesh has been cut at 20 inches and I've already pre-cut my pieces. My ribbon has been cut at 14 inches and I'm using two different patterns of the ribbon. So you can do the gather method where you scrunch it in order to gather it. You just lay your deco mesh down on the table and beginning from the section that you cut from, you just gather, scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. That is not how I do mine, but it's effective. I like to pinch the sides of my deco mesh and just gather in my hands. And if once you've gathered it, if you feel that it's uneven, you can just kind of pull at the ends and even everything out. Also, on my wreath, I am picking up two ends or two wire ends and just twisting. And twist it about give it two good twists just to keep it in place. And then I sort of set everything in place and fluff it out. I also leave a space between my placement of the mesh. And I'm setting my deco mesh sideways, not long ways. I'm doing sideways. You can do it long ways. For this particular piece, I'm just laying my mesh down sideways. And then I am just giving like two wraps. And I'm also going towards the middle section, not necessarily picking up from the edges, but from the middle. There's the top, very top. There's the bottom section. I'm kind of picking branches from the middle. And again, leaving some space in between my placement. And if you want to see more mesh and less greenery, you're going to just add more pieces of mesh. I want to see some greenery. I want to see more greenery than mesh. So I'm adding less pieces, and I would say about maybe 9 pieces. Well, between 7 and 9. And we'll see how many I add. And you can always just untie and redo if you find that you want to add more of the mesh. And it's sort of randomly that I'm choosing which pine needles to attach my mesh to, but I am leaving some space in between. got about enough room for one more. Looks like I used 7. I'm gonna add one more. And then we will move on to adding the ribbon. And because these pieces are 20 inches, when you fluff them, it's just going to take up more space. So it'll look nice and full. So I take my 1.5 inch on the top, 2.5 inch on the bottom, pinch the middle. I like to start forming them, shaping them to face down in a downward motion. And your ribbon can pretty much, you can face it whichever direction you'd like. I just like my ribbon for this piece facing down. And this is really just a simple wreath. My client doesn't want anything too frilly or with too much ribbon or different colors. So we're keeping it really very tasteful and simple. Should have a few more sets of ribbon to go here. And in a future tutorial, I will show a wreath made with the wire wreath form. A lot of people they do those tutorials as dollar store wreath. I've never quite made a dollar store wreath. You always need extra, either whether it be ribbon or the mesh. There's always extra items that you need, and it ends up not being completely a dollar store wreath. Maybe I just haven't been lucky enough to find all of the items that I need from the dollar store. But I have used the dollar store wreath forms, but then pretty much everything else is not from the dollar store. So there's my ribbon. Now, I kept the amount of ribbon that I added. Of course, my customer wants something very simple, but also I kept it at a minimum because I'm adding bows. So, and what I do, or I like to do, is find any open area where I've left a good amount of space in between my Deco mesh and the pine wreath, and that is where I'm going to put my ribbon bow. And I like for my bow to stand out, so I don't smush it. I kind of place it over the top and then just tie on the back. And I'll do a tutorial on how to make bows, on bow making. I make my bows by hand, but I've been doing this for over 20 years. I do have an easy bow, and I've got Bodabra. I've got a few different bow making kits, but I mainly do my bows by hand. So I want to place my bows at an angle. I used to just turn around and kind of look. Okay, and I've found the best angle here. Once I'm done with it, I'll go back and take a look, make sure that my placement is where I want it to be. Placement is very important. Oh, and also, before I attach my sign, the way I've attached the sign is I have, let's see if I can find them. I didn't think about this beforehand. So I've got these little like electrical, this is for electrical wires, like to tie together electrical wires. It has a little sticky on the back. So you just peel the yellow part, the section that has the stickiness, and I add a dab of glue, and then I attached it to the wood. It's very light. This is very light wood. And then I attached pipe cleaners or Chanel stems. Some people use staple gun, and sometimes I do too. But on both of these, they were so light that I decided to go with the little stickies. And maybe in a future tutorial also, I'll show how I stick that on to metal. I mainly use it on metal. Otherwise, I use my staple gun. But this was so light, and my staple gun is somewhere, that I decided it would be fine if I just used the stickies. I like to make sure everything is in its proper place. If there is any loose mesh string, then I just trim it out or trim it off. I think it's super cute. And I've got like little, it looks like berries, like little berries that I can add. They're glittery berries. Well, they are berries because it was left over from my Christmas wreaths. And that's just for a touch of color. But there are many other things that can be added. But this one I'm keeping simple per my customer request. I'll show you some other things that can be added. So I've got little wooden signs, and I'll just place them and then show everyone. Also, for a pop of color, I've added a gray one. Those are not going to stay on here because it's not what my customer wants, but just to give an idea of what and I'll go back and make sure like everything is tied down, and I'll do one just to demonstrate. When I do my tie backs, it doesn't matter what colors I use. If I'm using a pine wreath, I will just cover it by wrapping some of the greenery around my pipe cleaner. I like the backs of my wreaths to look very neat and clean, and not a lot of pipe cleaners or wire showing. And I don't put on the like placemat backs. I find it tacky, but that's just my personal preference. Some people like it, I don't. I mean, it's not like you really see the back, so as long as you clean it up, it won't be an issue. But there you have it, Valentine's Day, very simple wreath. And I'll be back with more tutorials in the next few days.